Super excited to announce the Law Firm Retreat Design Your Future being held this August 5th through 8th, 2026 in the Denver, Colorado area. Teaming up with Law Firm Architects, Power Strategy Group, we're going to be having an amazing opportunity for up to 15 firms to work on the business, not in the business. Find out more at powerstrategygroup.com. Welcome, everyone. I have an exciting guest, Sean A. Harrington, the director of AI and Legal Tech Studio of the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University. And he most recently was presenting at the ABA TechShow on prompt engineering and wearables. And overall, a very inspiring, exciting speaker and very knowledgeable on legal tech and AI. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I am an adjunct, but that's one thing we have in common in the legal education space. That you, how long have you been teaching in law, and what courses or what are you up to in the law school?
Yeah, so this is the third time that we've taught kind of an AI law practice course, and it's hands-on. They use AI for every single project, every single homework assignment. The final is AI. And so I've been doing that for 3 semesters now. The first one I co-taught with Kenton Bryce at OU Law, but the last one I did here at ASU Law. And then I'm also going to be teaching in the semi-controversial JD Online, where they will have a required 1-unit AI course.
Oh, okay. It's controversial because it's online, or what's the controversy?
Yeah, there's just a lot of people that don't believe you can replicate what you do in a law school, or shouldn't do what you replicate or what you do at a law school in an online setting. And so it's seen as semi-controversial. I think it's probably inevitable. But yeah, ASU has gone forward. Like the initial cohort for their JD Online is about 30 students, 25, 30 students. And they're being careful and, very thoughtful in the way that they're implementing it. But they are one of the more forward pushing law schools at the JD Online program.
I think one of the law schools I've taught at is providing an online school.
Yeah, more and more doing it since COVID. COVID was the big thing where for a long time, the ABA just said absolutely not. And then COVID came around and a lot of us had to do online. And so they said, well, let's open it up and do some limited runs for law schools to test if they can do it effectively, measure the learning outcomes carefully, make sure bar passage and employment are still high. And so some schools are experimenting with that. My early prediction was whoever in the kind of top 25, 50 schools does it really well, kind of wins, because it'll have this effect where you'll take a lot of people who would go to other schools who would just prefer, for whatever reason, to do it online. If you can stay in your house, you don't have to move states. Maybe you have childcare related issues
or relocation.
That's right.
Oh my
God. So you could essentially pull schools from higher tier school. You could pull students from higher tier schools because they're like, I could get into X school, but I could do this online and it's going to be a lot easier, cheaper, whatever for me. You're going to get a lot of really, really high caliber students potentially doing this. But the primary focus of ASU Law's, kind of integration of the online JD has been rural legal deserts. That is a problem here in Arizona because we have kind of 2 big, metropolises with Tucson and Phoenix, and then a huge portion of the state has unserved legal needs, especially essentially 1/3 of the state of Arizona is tribal lands. And there are a lot of legal deserts in those lands. And so they've specifically targeted people as students from those types of places to serve the legal deserts.
That's awesome. This is all part of this access to justice.
And that's Dean Leeds. With Dean Leeds, she's she obviously is affiliated with her tribe, but she also does a lot of Indian law stuff. And so that was something she was really passionate about when she was rolling out the program.
Oh, wonderful. And right before we started, we were talking about Law Droid and their conference. And I think that might have been one of the first times I ever saw you speak, potentially, was you were running a panel, or you were on a panel last year of, it was like law professors teaching AI and sort of just what they're seeing, right?
I moderated the panel. Yeah, Tom does a great job with Law Droid. And last year he had me come and moderate a panel on legal education and just kind of talk through how is this changing the way we're teaching students, law students? What are the kind of, the innovation, the most innovative attempts at teaching AI? And it was a great panel. That's just a great conference. Tom's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly, and it's happening right while we're recording this at the moment. Because like right before we hopped on, I was listening to something about A2J and just like how we're trying to serve that latent market and the scarcity and the whole like the legal desert. Like I get that. Like 2 weeks ago, I was in El Paso where they're putting a lot of these mega detention facilities, and my friend, classmate, a long colleague, time I've known her for 20 something years. She's an executive director of one of the immigration nonprofits in town. And she's like, we're the only ones doing the direct rep. And I'm like, you guys literally are in a desert and a legal desert, like at the same time, and they're putting more and more people in need. And, and part of me is like, well, when I've met some Minnesota ministers along the whole way. And then they were telling me like there's one immigration attorney in North Dakota, apparently. And I
Whoa.
was like, well, this is federal. Like you could just hire me. I can help, but I mean, I don't know. There's certain component of like some things aren't federal and people want to go, like I call like the touch me, feel me, see me, because they want to know who's representing them. But
And that's
anyway.
always the challenge is, do you bring the law to them, or do you bring them to the city and get them training and, or bring those people to the city somehow, hopefully with networking technology. And, if I had my choice, but I'm a technocrat, you get those people Apple Vision Pros or whatever you have to do, and you bring it to them virtually in ways that could serve people and save a lot of time and money, I think, in the process. But yeah, it's always the challenge with, legal deserts.
Yeah, but it's great that the law school's working on trying to remedy that however is possible, even if it's incrementally and, time will, I guess it's all a test to see how it's all gonna play out. But,
Yeah. And,
um
what states are going to relax regulations in ways that give you good avenues to pursue that? Arizona's been pretty good on that with their
mhm.
alternative business structure model that they have in law, that they just essentially scratched off one of the ethical rules and said, yes, non-attorneys can now, own a piece of law firms. And that's been pretty interesting. That was initially when it happened. I think people were really worried that you kind of Walmartize the law. You have these giant corporations come in, you have low quality services, and that hasn't happened. It's been 5 years. And what we've seen instead is some pretty innovative business structures. I don't hear any attorneys saying, I don't have clients anymore because of this ABS thing. That was a big worry by members of the bar. And it's kind of nothing. It's been a big pile of nothing for the most part. And yet it's dropped the cost of certain legal services. So it's one of those things where I understand the pushback in certain areas. We have to be careful with this stuff, but also sometimes you got to rip the Band-Aid off and just do it and see what the outcomes are. And Arizona did it, and the outcomes were pretty good.
Yeah, I was talking about TLTF where I saw Kenton Bryce, who was on a panel sort of similar to one you were talking about with sort of like the legal profession, the educators, and with Kat Moon, and some
Both
others.
great,
But
both great people to
yeah,
listen to. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And UT law dean and another professor from A&M law. And no, it was really great, but it made me think, because I teach law practice management. I've taught it at two different law schools in Houston. I'm like, what are you seeing the lay of the land? Because I saw your panel at a Law Droid last year, and then I saw that one at TLTF. But like what are you seeing on the lay of the land in terms of AI being taught in law schools? And I mean, I know your example, it is being taught, and you're like very experimental. Like you're very interactive. Like I really loved your prompt engineering session at ABA TechShow. It was really fun. It was really interactive and practical. But like I feel like it's very unevenly distributed around the country. But
Yeah, I think
I
that's
won't
probably
answer
the
for
best
you.
way to summarize it is, there was a 2024 ABA survey that went out, and it was like less than half of law schools had any AI class at all, or it was like 51%, right around half had one AI class, and less than like 12% had actual practical hands-on training. That was 2 years ago, and this is actually an area where we are seeing innovation, we are seeing adoption. And I think it's on everyone's radar in 2026 in a way that it wasn't in 2024. I think a lot of people, you kind of layer two levels of risk aversion when you come to a law school. You have lawyers,
Yeah,
and then you have
exactly.
education.
I know. I that's what I realized
And so,
listening to those 2 panels on legal education and tech at tech conferences was just like, we think lawyers are slow to change. Like,
Look at academia, yeah. So
yeah,
100%.
exactly.
There's innovation at the margins, but I think 2026 is materially different than 2024. When I go to, it's a legal week, I went to TechShow this year. And when I went to both of those, there's a lot less of the, we did a Microsoft Copilot trial, and now it was a lot of, we're now doing this agentic thing. It's a lot less pilot trials and a lot more like, we're actually implementing this thing. We understand, where we can use it safely, how to use it. We've settled on some products that we like. So I think 2026 for the law is different. It took us a little while to catch up, but we're getting there. In law school, it is all over the place. So I tell law students, you need to really dig in, because the marketing materials from your law school may say something about AI, but they may just have one ethics class. They may just have, I don't know, they may have just hired a third-party contractor to come in and teach you for a week. That's a lot different than what we have at ASU Law. So ASU Law, I think we have 7 classes. We have an AI specialization. We have the lab, which is launching, which
That's
you can
awesome.
get hands-on training. We do all these outside events. We work with the School of
I bet
Engineering.
lawyers want to go to this law school just to go.
I hope so. I would love to see them. I would love students to reach out, but it's like from the student's perspective, incoming students' perspective, like you have to be really, you have to actually scratch beneath the surface and see what they're actually doing with AI. Because some places will talk a big game and they're not doing anything at all. Some are just outright banning it still, which I think is not going to be proven to age very well. But
I asked at the law school that I'm at right now, I asked them, where are you seeing it? And they like research and writing a little bit. I think there has been 1 or 2 classes popping up, but for the last few years, I feel like I felt a huge duty to try to incorporate it as much as possible in my law practice management, because I felt like that was the only place they were getting some exposure to it at so early in the game.
I hear about
and so I
that from people at
incorporated
other
it as much
schools.
as I could, and everywhere I could, tech stack, operations, HR, whatever, marketing, wherever I could talk about AI, I did. So
I think that's awesome. And yeah, I hear about it from those schools. The legal writing department at a lot of law schools has had to take this on because it impacts so much of what they do. ChatGPT dropped and it broke the take-home essay. It broke law review articles to some degree. So there was a lot where they just had to go, whoa, we got to figure this out kind of immediately, whether we want to or not. Other parts of the campus, maybe less so. Here, what I do is I partner with the head of IT, and we go all around the campus as a sort of AI ops operation. And we go to admissions and HR, and we say, how can we automate the tedious parts of what you do? And so that's, I guess, another hat that I wear around here.
Oh, wow.
Which is just automation. I was meeting with the faculty members just yesterday about how you could, incorporate it into drafting something like a journal article or a book chapter. And I'm probably going to roll out trainings for faculty. We're already doing like a rapid sprint of trainings for the staff so that they can start implementing it. But I'm also at a fairly, lucky institution in that they give us campus-wide ChatGPT EDU. We have Gemini. These are all enterprise level accounts that are, they've gone through our cybersecurity and IT assessments. And then we also have, early on, ASU just said, you know what, we're just going to create a completely local private version of ChatGPT where we can select different models. You can build custom GPTs, and actually it has more functionality than ChatGPT's custom GPTs. And it's all safe. It's all local. You can put FERPA data into it. It doesn't matter because it's on our servers and it's private. And not every school has those tools available.
That's amazing. One of the questions, do you think that training lawyers in AI is different than any other technology adoption?
A lot of if Ken were here, he would say, no, it's not needed.
Okay.
But I'll disagree with him. I will say yes. And I think there's 2 reasons. So one is the level of uncertainty of this technology. Even if you're training them with Microsoft Word, you could say it's like, follow these steps and you will achieve this outcome. With this, there is this, because they're stochastic, there is this level of uncertainty. And some people just don't deal with that very well. And then the other, I think, problem here is that it's just all the high profile risk issues that we've seen with people with hallucinations, that giant database of 1,200 people or whatever it is that immediately goes to a New York Times article. And, whoever offending attorney ends up being the main character of Twitter for the day or whatever, So it's like, I think those 2 things make it different than something like training them in Microsoft Word, regular cybersecurity training, things like that we're used to doing for tech competency for lawyers.
Yeah, I agree. There's like a lot more of a curveball in AI than sort of more of a static tech. Anyway, I don't know. You explained it pretty well. And I think there's this big gap right now. I think between the lawyers who are experimenting and teaching themselves or trying to learn as quickly as possible, and those who aren't. How do you think we can sort of reduce that gap, or what can we, as practicing attorneys, be doing for ourselves and our staff to continue to learn and improve our AI skills?
Yeah, so I would agree with that. I frequently still will meet an attorney who I tried ChatGPT 2 years ago and it didn't do the thing that I wanted, and so I haven't used it since, or
OMG.
I'm never going to
Wow.
use it, or things like
Wow.
that. So I still hear people like that all the time, all around the U.S. It's not like a local, regional thing.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I think AI literacy is a big part of that. There's a lot of people who are like, you can't use it because it's going to leak client data. You can't because of all, these ethical reasons. But I think, more kind of pervasively, Americans are just fairly pessimistic about this technology. If you go look at international surveys, like somewhere like China, for example, they're much more optimistic. I frequently say when I present in front of a room full of attorneys, like working attorneys, their first question is, what are your consulting fees, or what's a killer app that I can use? If I present in front of academics, where, remember, that's this whole generation of new lawyers that are coming in to the law, their first questions are like data center water usage, ethical rights associated with intellectual property, sustainability, antitrust issues. So, essentially all these barriers to using and diffusing the technology. And it's like, we need a lot more literacy on that, because frequently when I hear, the kind of talking points, they're just completely out in left field. They've just read some, article that's like like the byline is like data center water usage, and they don't kind of scratch beneath the surface on a lot of these beliefs. So I think AI literacy is a big part of that. And then just, I also think we need to kind of create some space for attorneys to fumble with this technology.
Yeah.
It's brand new.
Agree.
Scott Schlegel was talking about this, and it really resonated with me at one of his presentations. And he's saying, like, look, this is a new thing. We're all learning how to use it. Maybe we don't give the super heavy-handed sanction slaps on everyone, and we kind of go, hey, this is all new. If you want to adopt, want us to adopt this technology, maybe we think carefully about it. I do the exact opposite in my class, where I slam students if they use it in ways that would get them in trouble in court. The reason I do that is because I don't want them to get in trouble in court or with their firm. I would rather have them do it in my class, and where they can practice safely. And there are catastrophic potential outcomes out there where you could, get your bar suspended. You could make somebody lose their house. You could, there's a lot of downsides to using this technology badly. But also, we have to be able to give people a little bit of grace for, fumbling with it if they're going to be early adopters, which is what we all are at this point.
Yeah, when I've just started saying sometimes in my speeches, like, the people who are doing the presentations on this right now, they're just the ones who experimented the last few years with this and who are willing to try and make a mistake and keep trying and get back up. And,
That's right.
because it's not like we all had a playbook on that. I mean, there's like Richard Susskind who did this for 40 plus years and like, I don't know, wrote a book or his PhD on it or something. But for like the other than like 3 or 4 people in the world like that.
Yeah, you get the extremely credentialed, like Megan Ma, PhD data science people who, have been really thinking about this stuff for quite a long time and have, like the credentials to back it up. And then you also get people, who are largely self-taught, who still do amazing things. But the only difference there, besides the obvious credentials, but the only difference between the person who's, self-taught and the person sitting in the audience is that they picked it up first. They're willing to experiment and try with it, kick the tires, see where it was useful. And so that's one thing I've been very, particular about in my classes, is that I force students to get a lot of reps with the technology. My wife is a equity trader at Charles Schwab. And when ChatGPT dropped, I would, every day I would come home and, team, this is going to change everything. I just use it on everything. And she was like, after a certain point, she's like, look, I don't want to hear about any AI anymore. Please shut up. And then one time she came to me where she had to make a macro in Excel, and she's like, hey, help me do this macro. And I said, watch this. And I used AI to do it. She was like, whoa. And so I think, what that made me realize is that little light bulb moment of, wow, this thing is really useful, for this, maybe other things. It has to be flipped in kind of every person. And so the way that I do that in my classes, I just brute force a lot of repetitions across a lot of different applications of the technology, hoping that every student in my class will have that light bulb moment, even if it's a different application for the students. And I think everyone needs that. Now, that's really hard for the super AI skeptical people who dip in and dip out of the technology every 6 months, try it for one thing, go, meh, because they're never going to really, it's going to take them a very long time to have that moment. Whereas if you just kind of try AI and literally everything first, when you're doing it, obviously maintaining safe guardrails, blah, 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 then you get that AI intuition a lot sooner of when it will be a lot more, when it will be useful to you, when it won't be useful to you. Yeah. And so I think that's something that we need, which is that hands-on, day to day, just grinding in it, training. And then it also is a lot less scary. It's not intimidated by it. We know that attorneys, the joke for a long time about law school was, as soon as you open this, like an Excel workbook in front of attorneys, they go, I didn't go to law school to learn math,
Oh, yeah.
Computer science is kind of the same, where it's like, if you open a bunch of code in front of an attorney, they just go, whoa, hey, whoa, that's not, I don't have a computer science degree, bro. One of my friends in law school, he had a literal undergraduate degree in musicology. He's a fantastic lawyer. But, so I think that's another part of it is there's a steep learning curve at the front. If you're learning about this technology and you don't know what GitHub is, and you've never seen code, and you don't know what a Python notebook. So maybe that's another thing we need to address kind of earlier in the law school setting. If this stuff is going to have a huge impact on the law, maybe some basic training around that would also be useful for lawyers and law students.
I agree with everything you're saying. And I've mentioned this before. Like, I took C++ in high school, and I was always like experimenting in that space. So I think that's why I'm not so intimidated. But I do feel like this is a lot like learning a language. Like, the more you get the basics, like the letters, and you can see the words, and then you feel more comfortable in it, and then you just experiment, and then just like you're saying with the brute force usage, and then you become a habit. If I'm thinking like doing my Duolingo every day, and then it's like, okay, and then use that exponential learning curve. And for those listening who are like trying to improve, and I do want to ask some of the 4-part prompt engineering suggestion that you have, but like, what would be some of the things you would tell people who who they're all over the place, at learning, but like, some of the things I tell people, it's like, get on some newsletters or Substacks, listen to some podcasts, follow a couple of thought leaders, like Sean Harrington, Tom Martin, there's like some usual suspects out there. What else would you suggest for people, or specifically?
Yeah, this stuff is moving really, really fast. And so it can be really challenging to keep up with it and all of the latest and greatest. For me, something like Claude Cowork drops and I immediately go and use it. Most attorneys don't have that time in their schedule. I'm an academic, obviously.
Yeah,
and
I
most people
know.
are just,
One of my friends, he like disappeared for a couple of weeks. He's like, this is amazing. And I was like, I wish I had time, but I'm like,
that's right.
where, like,
That's
have
right.
so
I have a
many jobs
1-year-old
right
and a
now.
2-year-old, so it's
Okay,
challenging.
wow.
Yeah. But I just wake up really early and
Yeah.
don't sleep like
You
a
find
like a completely cracked computer developer or whatever. But most people, I think what you can do is just work this into your news diet. So like you said, there's some great newsletters out there. There's some great people to follow on LinkedIn that if you just kind of blow through for 10-15 minutes a day and skim it, you can at least stay aware of what's going on. And I think that's probably a good idea. The other thing is we just need to build more trainings into our work trainings. Like I've said it in a million presentations, but we used to be able to go into Westlaw and Lexis once a year, do their yearly training, get kind of gamed up on everything, and we were kind of good. We knew all the features that were going to be important for the next year. Well, this stuff is moving so quickly. You have to increase the number of those trainings. Like, they have to happen more frequently. And maybe they need to be less burdensome. So instead of sitting for an hour and blah, blah, maybe you kind of set aside some time every week. Maybe it's like a half hour and you just go, this is going to be my half hour training with AI that I do every single week or every other week, or maybe we as an office do it. But it needs to be more often. It needs to be less burdensome. And it needs just to be kind of worked into the natural hygiene of what you're doing as a lawyer, I think.
So let's go into the prompting framework, the 4-part framework. What is that? And give us some
So
tips on
that, yeah,
improving our
it's hard.
prompting.
Prompting is so specific. Prompting, if you're doing something like, hey, just edit this email for me and make it sound nicer or whatever, that prompt that I just said is probably fine, But if you're doing something much more complicated than that, where you want to integrate documents as examples or, go do some research first, those kinds of things, having a prompt framework, at least for now, is helpful. There was about a year and a half ago, it seemed like people were just saying prompting is dead. These things are going to be so intuitive and understand us so well. Well, it's still pretty useful, in my opinion, very useful to understand the basics of prompting. So you go, that's great. Okay, that's step one. I understand why I need to prompt and why it's useful. Now, step two is, how do I settle on a prompting framework? Because there's all kinds of them. Westlaw has its own. There was Rice and Create. There was all these different ones that people would do at prompting sessions. What I chose is kind of a general purpose prompting framework that was created by the head of OpenAI, like the head of prompting at OpenAI. And it was when the first reasoning model, O1, came out. And the reason I choose to run with that and still sit with that is the current models that we sit with are reasoning models. And so it's pretty good. And the other thing is, it's extremely basic. And so it's very easy to remember. It's very easy to kind of work in. It's probably the one that I use for most complex things that I do most of the day. If I'm not doing something like JSON prompting, building an entire app or something like that. It's easy to remember, and it's easy to work into that prompting workshop that I did with you. So I like it. I think it's great for attorneys to learn on. It doesn't have to be the last prompting framework you learn. It's just a great one to start on.
What is like the coolest thing you've ever prompted and created or got? Like, give an example that you've something.
So
Yeah.
like, it'll one-shot apps. So there's been now several times where, I guess that's another thing, is my prompts have gotten much, much, much longer over time. So I'll do a bunch of research and really take my time in building some sort of app. Like my wife wanted a financial dashboard for the family that was like kind of like TurboTax's Mint, but she had all these very specific things. She wanted to go into her email and scrape receipts and blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
All these like little display
Yeah.
things in certain ways, flag certain purchases. And I was like, yeah, I think I can make that on my home PC, so it's all safe and local to us, whatever. And have it just run a few times, it was running every like 15 minutes for the whole day or whatever. And I was like, I wonder if I could do this. So I sat and I thought about it for a long time, and I looked up some frameworks, and I kind of looked at other apps that were similar. And I talked with AI for a long time to build this, very extensive long prompt that was literally pages and pages of Markdown. And then I threw it into, I think it was Opus 4.6 at the time, and it just absolutely one-shotted it. So, and that's happening more and more. I have a really stupid but fun benchmark that I use for all the new models, specifically the coding models when they come out. I have this obscure old anime that I like, and so I try to make a whole video game around it. And thus far, not a single one has been able to do it. I don't know if that's my prompting, but I would say that Codex's 5.5 has gotten the closest I've ever. It was playable. It was pretty good. It wasn't a complete video game, so it would have taken hours and hours and hours of development. But the fact that I was able to just put in a prompt, have a working video game that you could log, 10, 15 hours in to beat it was like pretty amazing to me.
Do you have like unlimited credits or something, or you have to like pause for a few hours? I don't know. I've heard a lot of people have
So
reports of these.
I'm lucky in that, part of being, having the studio is I proposed a budget, and that budget necessarily included the pro version of Claude and the pro version of ChatGPT. So I've the top rate limits you can have. That said, I still exceed them, my rate limits all the time. And so I have another budget item, which is a token budget. And then also I've been able to partner with a handful of different AI companies, and they'll give me tokens. And so I have some leftover tokens sitting around from some of those. But I still exceed the limits frequently, even though I'm 20x whatever the $20 a month account is.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, so I mean, we've covered some tips on the prompting and some things you'll be able to accomplish, and just like also like legal academia, like sort of some of the resistance to change, but yet the importance of sort of the online courses and just teaching the students on AI in the practical sense, and just sort of the groundwork that's necessary to help the future lawyer. And so, I mean, I think we've also seen a lot of the barriers to adoption in the practice of law. Just we've been talking about that in general, but just like I think it's a lot of that fear, or they're busy, or they tried something before, and then they're just like, well, I tried it once, and so that's not going to change. But I also see, even with like vendors or case management software, like you try it 3 months ago and it's got a new feature or something now.
That's
So
right.
everything
That's why I always tell
is
people to look up a recent tutorial before you use any products. Like, it has to be within the last, like, ideally couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, this
yeah.
goes for everything. This goes if you're going to spin up codecs for the first time, or if you're going to use Replit, or if you're going to use ChatGPT and you've been using Claude or whatever it is. Find a recent tutorial that's half an hour, and you will use it so much better. You will understand what it's good at, what it's bad at, all the new features. But diving into them frequently is either overwhelming, or you're missing really useful features, or you're spending a lot of time doing a thing that'll just do out of the box easily if you know how to turn on the feature. So, and it has to be recent. This stuff moves like lightning.
Yeah, no, exactly. Something you said about how one of your other hats you wear at the school is like you go, what do you call it, the AI ops, or you run around the school and you say, how can we make you more efficient, or how can we infuse some AI? It's almost like we need that at our law firms. I know.
That's right.
What would you suggest for those listening? Like, I usually say, figure out what's your biggest pain point and go try to figure out how you can make it more efficient in that space, and then work from there. But how do you approach it, or how would you
I
apply
think we
that to a
will
law
have
firm?
that. Any firm that has the money and the capacity, maybe not the small mom and pop 1 and 2 person firms or little boutique firms like the one that I worked at, but anything that has the capacity to have that internal AI ops team, I think will at some point. You will have your resident vibe coder on site that will do stuff for you at the firm. It's just a matter of time for all of that.
It's true.
I would say start moving in that direction right now if you're a firm. And the way that you do that is give somebody at your firm a little bit of break from the billable hour, a little bit of money to test out these tools, maybe send them to
A token
ILTA
budget.
yeah, token budget, because they will exceed it at some point. My wife, so this last weekend, it's on that. So my wife this last weekend, she's like, I see all you doing all this cool stuff with your OpenClaw. I want my own OpenClaw. And I said, all right, I'll spin up an OpenClaw for you. And so she got so hooked on it that she actually took the day off yesterday just to play with their OpenClaw, and then immediately maxed out my Open Router and OpenAI credits, wasting all of the tokens that I had.
Oh my
so like,
goodness.
I'm gonna have to
I think
teach you about
her
token
slight was the
efficiency.
switch is lit. Yeah.
So it is fun, it is addicting, but it is still expensive. And so if you at a firm are like, yeah, we want to be AI forward, yeah, we want to start leveraging this AI stuff, you have to set aside some money for that person, because there is going to be a time where they will go over their token budget or need to subscribe to something that's kind of expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And also you want them going out into the community, becoming part of a community. There's a lot of legal tech communities. There's a really cool one in Austin, apparently, where they do like a hackathon.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's every month or whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
But sending people to things like that, or getting involved in online communities so that you can start, working. But that obviously requires the person not to be doing other work. They're doing, that's their job, is a piece of their job at least, is to do the AI stuff. And so find who that champion is within your org and get them doing it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's a good start. Like blocking off that, identifying that champion, blocking off the time, giving them the resources. And yeah, even in the pre-AI world, and when I talked about like evaluating your tech stack, those olden days, it was always, there should be someone besides you, the law firm owner,
That's right.
who's in charge of this, like, because there's so
You're
much
busy.
change, and staying on top of it. Yeah, and
You're busy,
liaising
and
with
it
the
can be highly
vendor.
specialized and like,
Mhm.
potentially really technical, where you really have to like, we're all at a point right now when we're using these AI services where you actually have to read their data retention policies, their cybersecurity
Right.
policies.
Yep.
It can be technical. It takes time. It's an acquired skill. So you have to give the person the ability to go do that. And it's they need a break from the billable hour usually.
Well, that was a really good practical tip. And I think a lot of our listeners are probably somewhere in that space. And if they haven't already allocated someone to that, but needing to do so and keep encouraging them and giving them the instructions to run around and be that AI ops department.
Yeah.
So moving over to
And you can just call yourself that. No, it's
you could
not
just,
like
yeah,
I don't have like
I
a
know.
certificate or a credential, anything. I
That's
just
right.
call myself
AI
AI
ops,
ops and I am.
resident
And it sounds
vibe
super cool.
coder.
So
Yeah, I'm just like, we need some t-shirts for some of this stuff.
yeah, you just say I'm the AI ops and everybody goes, okay, apparently, because I've been doing it for months now.
Well, it's been fun. So now we're moving over to the fun fact questions.
Okay.
What is your favorite board game or card game?
This is gonna put off a lot of people, but I'm just gonna say
All
I
right.
try to get my
Let's see.
wife to play Magic the Gathering with me.
Oh, okay. I don't know what that is, but I'll have
It's
to look it up.
super nerdy.
Okay.
It's like Dungeons and Dragons, but with cards. I guess it would be the best.
Okay.
Best. So, but that's the one I like to play the most. I'll just be honest. I'm a weird nerd.
Okay. Well, I guess it worked. So yeah, we never had that answer before on the
Good.
110 or something
I
like
represent
that.
my community.
What would you consider your superpower?
I think staying balanced with AI, not falling into cyber psychosis. I hear a
Uh-huh.
lot of people, and I mean, I recognize that social media kind of rewards this to some degree, but a lot of people will like to say this thing is more powerful than God, and other people say this is the devil and it's eating all our water and our intellectual property. It's going to kill us all. And I've been able to, at least in my opinion, have a pretty good perspective and stay right in the middle and say these are these are the worrisome parts, these are the really useful parts. And I'm hoping I'm kind of threading that needle correctly and being balanced in my analysis. And I, again, I spent thousands of hours with AI at this point, and I have not developed cyber. I haven't fallen in love with it or anything crazy yet. So I think that's maybe my superpower.
Well, it's good that it's part of your job too. So you're doing it in your free time and
Yeah,
work, and it's just like
that's right.
you're experimenting
And
with it.
let's be honest. Being an academic in this environment makes it much easier for you to learn this stuff. There's no, especially once my class is over, if I need to block off 3 hours just to read some obscure package in Python or some documentation or some walkthrough, I can do that. Attorneys can't. So I recognize that, that's just part of the privilege of working in academia is you have you just have a much more relaxed schedule. And one of the
And
reasons I stay, frankly.
yeah. Well, and but going to the point about, if the law firm owner, in theory, you control your schedule, right?
Yeah,
You should be able to block off time, and in that working on the business, not in the business category.
that's right.
So I think that's just really some good practical advice. Blocking off time, maybe 30 minutes here or there, or an hour. I mean,
Or
what would
AI.
you consider would be a good amount of time a week? I mean, we were mentioning adding the reading component into like our news and things like that.
Yeah. So let's say if I'm going to be super realistic for a working attorney. I would think at least an hour a week that you dedicate specifically to AI training and knowledge would be pretty reasonable.
Okay. I
And
think
you could
that's
learn a lot.
reasonable.
Once a week, I mean, you truly focused on it and you had, your good news source, you followed your Ethan Maliks and your Sam Hart, whoever you like
Yeah.
in this space. And, you come up with a cluster of them and you actually read their stuff and internalize it, try to operationalize some of it for an hour. That's like probably, being realistic on my side, that's probably the most you're going to get from an attorney to commit
No,
to.
I
But I think
agree with you. Yeah.
you can do a lot of damage with that.
And also, like, another tip is like you can put an article in like Notebook LM and put on audio overview
Right.
and like listen to it while you're driving if you don't already have like an AI podcast to
We
listen
are
to as
in the
well.
golden age of manipulating formats. That is one thing. So let's say you're somebody who's like, look, Sean, I don't have time for that. And I live in Houston. I have to sit in traffic. Well, it's never been easier to take something that's written and make it a podcast. Or if you only like video stuff, take an article and turn it into an AI slot video that you'll watch. I've had students do it where they'll take they took a student just as a joke, took a thing that I wrote and turned it into one of those AI slop videos that like teens
Oh, yeah.
watch where it's like really repetitive, which I thought was funny and hilarious. So if we're in the golden age of manipulating formats, if you're somebody who sits in traffic because you live in Southern California where I grew up, and you're like, I don't have an hour during the day, but I do have to sit on the 405 for an hour and a half every day when I come home. Well, now's a great time to work this in and start, your AI hygiene.
That's right. What is a habit that you believe is contributing to your success?
So I have the ability to lock in and focus on a thing for a long period of time. And that is something that I undervalued, I think,
Mm,
in the age of AI. But I can just sit and stare at a code base for an hour and a half and tweak it. And I found that some people just find that just beyond the pale. Like that feels like torture. And so I feel very fortunate. And I don't know if it's because I've always been a big reader. So I'm always reading 1 or 2 books at any given time, either in
mhm.
audio or actual books. And so I can just lock in on a thing for long periods of time in a way that I've discovered trying to teach this to other people, that they just go, this is so tedious. I don't know how you do this. I find it not only frustrating, but boring. And for me, it feels like a weird little puzzle. So I don't know what that is, but it's ended up definitely working well in the age of AI.
So I have 2 things to that. One, there's this book called Deep Work by Cal Newport.
Oh yeah, great book. I'm a big Cal
Yeah,
Newport fan.
yeah. Well, I think it's because 'cause you've learned how to train yourself to
Mm.
to use your mind in that capacity, and when I was writing, I think my first
My
book,
wife wasn't as kind about it. She thinks I have a quote unquote dusting of something. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means, but, like, I mean, one of the premises of that book is, like, you could only focus up to maybe 4 hours a day, and you have to train your brain like a muscle, and I think we're in this whole, like, super, interruptive world with all the different
Yeah,
devices, and I'm really concerned about, like, my kids and the next generation
we're
and
very
even
concerned about
myself.
that. Our kids
Yeah,
don't have any devices.
that's
I
great.
am cracked and on social media all the time. That's, I guess, another superpower that I have. And I guess this is actually something that I unintentionally trained myself for. So I was a very early adopter on the internet to the point where I was going into bulletin board systems at the age of 12 or whatever it was, and have been consistently online since then. And so a lot of the things that I think people find very distracting, offensive, tug their attention, I am almost immune to it just from such a long period of going through each and every stage of
Mhm.
it. Because I'll hear people say things like, well, I can never go on that platform because X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, I could skim any platform, it doesn't bother me. Or like I get locked into TikTok or something like that. And I'm just like, I just turn it off. So I think maybe just being too online for too long, I've like immunized to a lot of the stuff that other people, it bothers them. And so I'm able to kind of eat this fire hose of information and just kind of cast off the stuff that I don't care about in maybe ways that other people aren't.
No, that's a very useful skill. What is a podcast or a book that you would recommend?
On AI,
Or anything, some people talk
anything. Well,
about
so the
these
Cal
random
Newport's a really
fiction
good
books,
one. And that
which
probably
yeah,
would have
that's a
been
good
one of, I think
yeah.
it's really good.
Sorry.
No, it's really good. In the age of social media, finding a way to actually lock in, like, there's going to be a lot of people who are watching this. And I would ask you, when was the last time you sat and read a book? And
Yeah, for
because
real.
there was quite a long time there where I didn't, I mean, I have little kids, so it makes it even harder. But there was a long time there where I was just like, I would go to work and then I would go and make dinner for my wife and we eat together and then we maybe watch a movie together or something. And then we would both sit in bed with each other and we would be doom scrolling at night, like sitting next to each other in the bed. I'm like, is this healthy? So we don't do that anymore. I think being much more intentional with your, the way you consume information, I think
Yeah,
is
I
a
agree.
superpower in the digital age. And Cal Newport's, as far as I've seen, has done some of the best work on that. As far as something that's like actually, practical to laptop class users. So I think that sort of informational hygiene is really important. And then when you're going on like websites to go learn about AI, be more intentional about it. I'm not just going to doom scroll my LinkedIn feed or whatever. I'm going to go to this person's thing and I'm going to read the thing. Give yourself some time for scrolling just to find the latest and greatest. But otherwise, you should be pretty intentional about your information environment.
I agree with that. And actually, I was mentioning this earlier, that okay. I have a 13 and a 15-year-old, so mine are a little bit older than yours.
Yeah, see,
But
that's a
like,
hard age. I don't know how I would deal with that because having a phone's like genuinely useful
okay,
in
I'm
many
gonna call my
ways.
daughter out. I got upset at her because she was late to the car for a drop off. What did I see on her phone? She was watching a TV show. She was
Mm,
watching a TV show on her phone on her way down from her room to the car, and I was and that was why we were running late. I was like, "No,
yeah,
no, honey,"
yeah, yeah,
But what I was telling my friend about this whole story was that we are in a tough situation because that generation that we're raising, they were born with electronics. Like, you talked about 12, you were on those things. I had internet when I was like 16, I think, with a computer, one computer for the house in that time.
yeah,
But they've had it their whole lives, and we used the internet and that socialization during the pandemic as an outlet. So we sort of let them
yeah,
do stuff that we normally wouldn't right now. And then it's sort of
yeah.
like hard to like take it back, in a way. And
Yes.
it,
It's
I
it's a very tricky problem, and I hear, one thing I do hear is I've seen and talked to a lot of educators who say they can tell the difference between the students who have been iPad kids or had access to social media on their
Oh,
iPhone, and
wow.
the students
Yeah.
whose parents do not let them, and the ones who are not, do not have access to that. They're able to sit still for longer. They're able to deeply read things, and the other ones just look anxious if they're not kind of doom scrolling all the time. So it's something that I think we're all going to have to deal with. Both social media and AI feel like collective experiments that none of us signed up for. And there are
Exactly.
great parts about both. And I talk about the benefits of AI all the time. I'm fairly optimistic about it, but there's absolutely going to be downsides of both. And it feels weird to me that we're experimenting on an entire generation, including ourselves, with this technology. But I don't see any way around it for AI. With social media, I don't see any way that I personally am going to stop it. So it's like, yes, I agree. There's going to be some downsides, and we're figuring them out right now. But I think being really intentional about the way that you use it is like step number one.
No, I agree, and I think the whole being away from the internet and technology is becoming a
Yeah,
premium. Like, I'm paying a lot of money for them to go to 2-week sleepaway camp so they don't get on electronics,
right,
Like,
right.
isn't that,
That's
like, the
great.
opposite of growing up in, like, the 90s,
My
like,
parents
where
just, I was
we
completely feral as a kid. I mean, I was
Yeah,
latchkey and feral. And my parents would, like, on
drinking
a
from the
Saturday,
water
I'd just like,
hose, all
I'd
that
run
stuff.
out of the house at 7 a.m. and I'd just run back in at 7 p.m., not even come back for food or water or anything. So yeah, it's a very different childhood than I experienced.
Yeah. Well, Sean, it's been fun. How can people
It's been
find you and
wonderful.
stay connected?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, and I have SeanAHarrington.com. I bought the URL finally, just as a place to warehouse all of the stuff that I do and put it in one place, and you can connect with me on there. I'd love to hear from you. Yeah,
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening. It's been great having Sean on. We went everywhere from prompting to
a
AI
lot of
hygiene
territory.
to locking in to legal academia and so much more. But I appreciate it, and stay tuned for the next episode. We'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to Power Up Your Practice. I'm Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. We love your reviews. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us one and share this podcast with someone else so that they can know what you've been learning on our show. And make sure to check out the Power Up Your Practice book. It's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon. It's packed with 25 chapters of strategies to grow and streamline your firm. And we also have the free Power Hub community on School to keep the conversation going in between the episodes. So make sure to keep powering up your practice, and we'll see you next time.